Okay, part two of creating our theme options page. We had just gotten started in the last video. We had added it, remember, to the admin menu, so it's going to show up in there. Now we've also got to start registering all of this with WordPress. So we're using the admin init. This is the hook we're going to use here, admin init, and we need a function. So we create a function by this name down here, register and add fields, register and build fields rather. All right, and we're using some settings in this. This is using the settings API in WordPress, which is very, very powerful. And the purpose of it is it automates a whole lot of things for us. Okay, what we're doing here is we're basically setting up the theme options in general. Remember, we had to reference those when we want to pull the options out of the database. This is how we're going to do it, by registering this setting. Then what we need to do, and this is very important because it's sometimes missed in a lot of things I've seen on the web, you have to add a sections setting. Okay? What this means is you can have different areas of your theme options page. And this can be very handy if you've got a big long one. You can use JavaScript, for example, to hide those sections, tab them, for example. The point here is, even on a simple one like this, remember this is the simple page we're going to create, even on a simple one like that, we have to actually create one section at least. If you don't do that, things aren't going to work properly. And that can get a bit confusing because you go, hey, I don't have any sections, I've got two things. I don't need sections, but you do actually need at least one section. Okay, let's quickly go over these. Main section, this is the ID, so we want to reference it through this ID. This is going to be the title, which actually appears physically on our options page. This is the actual function that's going to create the HTML for our area. Now we technically don't actually need anything for a section, but we can put some if we want, and this is the function where we do it. And then we have to reference the page. All the time we have to keep referencing the page, which is the current page. So we just use file, which is the easiest. All right, we've got our section. Now we actually want to put in a field into our form. We use add settings field now instead of section. Again, we give it a name that we can reference it, an ID that is. Then the actual text that's going to show up in our form. Then we're going to give it a function, and this is the name of the function we're going to create for the actual HTML. Again, reference the page. And finally, this is very important. You have to reference the section where it's going to go. If you don't do this, it's not going to show up anywhere. So again, we look back here and we go main section. Okay, that's where I want it to be. So we need that ID. All right, this here is a section for validating your settings. Now we're not going to go into that because it gets to be a lot more complicated than we have time for here, but this would be a place where you could check and make sure everything's secure when it's being submitted to the server. And that, by the way, is done up here under register setting. That's where you say, here's the function where you're going to go and validate the settings, and that's down here. I've just put in something very basic here that simply returns the options. It doesn't actually check anything at this point. Okay, I've left lots of space here so that we're not crowding ourselves when we're looking. Normally wouldn't leave this much space in your file. All right, now we're actually going to create the fields. Remember, we had set up here things like main header setting and Twitter account setting. Those were the functions we were going to create. Well, here they are. We create the main header section. We already have a title for it, so here I'm going to put, well, this is where you control the general elements. Great. Now I need a text field, and we simply echo it out. This options gets it from the theme options. If it already exists, it would plug it in here if there was already a value from the database. All right. So now we're moving on to the actual, remember we had to have a function for creating the page as a whole. There it is right there. Now we're actually creating, look at this. This is all we have to do. This is literally all there is to do to create your page. There's the title of my page. Putting it in wrap is very important because that's a standard CSS for admin sections in WordPress. Okay, so you do this class wrap over here. Now I'm actually using icon 32 is actually built into WordPress. You can find lists of these on the web. This particular one produces tools for us. This little icon right up here. There's my theme options. Right, so that's what's going on right here. This is a little section we put in. So that's just a message for when there's successful updating. And then finally, Here's my actual form. Now I've made my submit button down here, save changes, by making this class button primary, by the way. That's what will make it blue to stand out on the page, which I think is important. Now, all we're doing is these two functions here. This is the power of the WordPress settings API. This produces, the first one produces some hidden fields for security purposes. We just have to give the name that we registered up top there, theme options. Then we do something called, a function called do settings sections. Okay. Now it sounds like we're only doing sections here, but it actually does sections and fields as well. In this particular case, we're doing the main section because there is only a main section, but we have to reference it. And we talk about the page here. Again, we just use file, so it's the sections for this page, but just the main section. All right? Doing that, that's all you have to do, and it will loop through all of the fields. Whatever you register up here under Add Settings Fields, if I just keep adding fields, and we'll do this in the next video, we'll actually create another field. I can just keep adding fields here, and I don't have to touch anything down here. It just pulls them all automatically. That's how powerful this is. So we've done a fair bit of work for this one file, but a lot of the work's done now, and all we have to do is create more and more fields for this page. So we upload it. That's all it took for us to create. Okay. So in our next video, what we're going to look at is we're going to add another field here that's going to allow us to take out, allow the client to take out this particular area here, the tagline, if they want to.